It is very easy to say that Harry Brooks played a bad shot, and he did. But there are two things going on here at once: the execution of the shot and the theory behind it. So we know that Brook doesn't just like to stand and face the short balls. So he has developed this method of moving back and then swinging through the line. The problem for him is that he makes this decision very late, partly because he's worried about the surprise Yorker. This also is because he doesn't usually face three bowlers who can deliver at 90 miles an hour when he is backing away. And that is something worth noting about all of Bazball. The Bazball style hasn't had to go up against a bowling lineup of this speed trying to go short all in. The South African attack, which is pretty much very similarly paced, bowled short, but not like it was a doomsday plan. So usually when Brook would back away, like he did against Wagner or against Pakistan, suddenly now that's a lot more difficult. But Stark sees him move, and so he follows him with the ball. At this stage, there is clearly not enough room for the original shot idea, which was the forehand down the ground. But Brook doesn't stop playing this shot. He fully commits, as he has been encouraged to do so by management. This means that he spoons the ball up in the air and he's essentially trying to swing freely with a ball aimed at his nipple. There are other attacking shots to be played here, obviously the pull and the hook, but he also could have played an uppercut as well. But he wants to play the biggest one, and because of that, he's gone. Caught at cover. It looks terrible because it is a dreadful execution of a fairly risky and unorthodox shot. But there is a reason to play this, at least within the Bazball universe. The field that Brooks had was set up for the short ball in that now very familiar Neil Wagner-esque style. Boundary riders from deep square to deep point. The idea being that if you bowl short, you can protect more of the boundaries, as it is hard to hit the ball down the ground from your armpit. So Brooks's backing away and swinging method actually does make some sense. And he is clearly strong enough to muscle a 90-mile-an-hour bowler down the ground. He's quick enough on his feet to make the decision, and he's not afraid of how he looks when he's playing it. Also, he's not particularly good at standing in the crease and playing conventionally. So all in, it makes sense. In fact, most of what England does, even the bits that end up looking like this, actually makes sense when you drill down on it. Sure, it's not the sport as we know it, but there always is some cricket logic when you think hard about what England have been doing. Put it this way, it's not really that much different than if Australia had 4 slips and kept delivering Brook wide balls and he eventually nicked off. He would still be falling into Australia's plan by taking a risk. Exploiting the field and a very obvious bowling plan is actually good cricket from Harry Brook. However, there is no shot in cricket that is good if you decide you're going to play it no matter where the ball ends up. There's no doubt that an attacking mindset helps. So does not playing a nipple slice to cover. Matt Roller wrote a piece about how you cannot accept how good England have been without also accepting that sometimes it will just not work. And I completely agree with that. England have won by attacking, so suddenly getting upset when they're playing the exact same shots and they're not working now is a little bit silly. However, there is more than one way to attack, and certainly more than one way to win. England could have milked Australia's very defensive fields for nearly a run and ball without taking any risks at all. I mean, look at this field. You and I could find singles here. That is still very attacking, and throw in the odd 4 byes and the plenty of Australian no balls, and the scoring break would have been fine. England would have been well on top. The truth is that England don't want to play this way because they've completely bought into the alpha male masculine way of playing Bazball. This smart attacking is not enough for them, and Australia knew that and used it against them. Even as England occasionally knocked a few around, Australia knew that they would eventually swing hard again, so it was worth them going in on it, because England can't help themselves. The other option here was to play defensively. And to say England don't play any defensive cricket after watching them bowl with Ringfields at Edgbaston or 7 men on the boundary for Cummins is crazy. Obviously, they don't play a lot of defensive cricket anymore, but remember, this was a special circumstance because Nathan Lyon was injured and was probably not going to bowl again in this game. That meant that Australia were going to have to ask Cameron Green to not only bowl more, but also do it in a punishing short bowling spells. Or England could have just mixed up all 3 of the options. Rope-a-dope is one of the most famous sporting tactics of all time. But Muhammad Ali started that fight by actually coming out really aggressively and throwing right-hand leads to shock George Foreman. It's later on he went to the ropes in that defensive move. But even when he did that, he still threw enough punches to keep Foreman honest. England could have gone for their right-hand leads early in terms of Pope and Pluckett taking on the short ball. Then with Root and Brook, those are the 2 perfect guys to exploit the field more. And then they had the ability to go into the defensive mode that only Ben Stokes would go on to activate. It would have maximised England's strength, which is the entire point of Bazball. Making green over bowl, ensuring that Cummins and Hazelwood have to deliver huge spells at the start of back-to-back tests, while also bowling a lot of bouncers, which are really tiring. I mean, is it not attacking to try and break the Australian bowlers? Not just for one test, but maybe even the entire series. The other problem for England is we are now beginning to see a tactic that works against Bazball. According to CricViz, only 5 times in an innings have 5 wickets from balls shorter than 10 metres ever happened in modern cricket. And 2 of them are this year against England. One was in a test match they lost, and the other, well, if it's not going to be a loss, then they certainly lost their winning position by doing it. That doesn't mean it will always fail for England. This strategy holds up pretty well because if a team is going to try this short ball method against you, it could also mean that England's scoring rate could actually go higher, if that's even possible. This is the strike rate of shots in Test cricket against pace. 3 of the top 4 are from bouncers and short balls. Only the slash through the offside breaks them up. When you score from these, it's fast. Of course, then when you look at the averages of these shots, it does drop massively. Risk beat reward. It might also suggest that you should only pick the right balls to attack in the situation. Since McCullum has taken over, England have halved the leave rate against bouncers. So being that we know that most of those are going to be attacking more and just scatter their field in true Keith Miller style, we have already seen them try this. In the first 30 overs, England were well on top. And at that point, Australia had tried length. Then tea was called and they came out and they bowled a lot of short balls. So many bouncers. England saw the field and they knew the plans, and they skipped into each trap. Australia basically turned into 4 Neil Wagners. And even then, it was Wagner on a particularly flat pitch when he was really frustrated. And they did all of this, of course, because England's early Bazball had worked. And yet again, England had actually got the best of the batting conditions. And yet somehow, England managed to turn 188 for 1 with Nathan Lyon off the field into a sizable first innings deficit. If anyone has been on board with Bazball, it's me. But this goes back to what I said last week. Bazball has 2 parts to it. The tactical elements that make a lot of sense, and the alpha male posturing, which is utter nonsense. Let me put it this way, as a specialist batter, McCullum had a test strike rate of 66. In his overall career, including his keeping, it was a little bit lower. There is no way you can look at this and think he wasn't an attacking player. But he is a long way off the top 3 guys of his era here. But this is McCullum versus runner ball in all of his test innings as a specialist batter where he made 20 runs or more. What do you see? I would suggest that it was very rare for McCullum to attack until right at the back end of his career. And even when he decided on that as a method, he still has some very slow innings mixed in. Blocking, batting slow, using the right tactic was fine for Brendan McCullum as a player. But he has this team running around with their arse on fire, sniffing out of the mouths of dragons. I mean, clearly that has worked a lot. But you know what? Some days just a cup of tea and a biscuit is the right option.